Forget all you know about podcasts. We welcome you to an experience uniquely different. Please join us for our coverage of all entertainment on the fringe of society. The candles are lit, the lights are down low. It is now time to welcome our host as he steps up to the pulpit. The sacrifice has been prepared for the midnight black mass.
Ghastly greetings, groovy ghoulies and weary travelers. You have landed at the Midnight Black Mass, and I am your host, the Good Reverend Dan Wilson, here for another edition of the program. We bring you the new American gospel on professional wrestling and all entertainment on the freakish and garish and ghoulish side of life. Entertainment on the fringe here, courtesy of the Potty Humor Network. Glad to be back with you. Want to thank all of you for subscribing to us, and if you're not doing it, you're just streaming on YouTube, you're missing out because you can take the Midnight Black Mass with you anywhere you go. How can you do that, you ask? You can subscribe to us on iTunes or Stitcher, as well as Spreaker or any of the other services that host RSS podcast feeds. The Potty Humor Network is a part of that. Also, if you notice, Get Your Pulls is back in rotation. The new episode of the Potty Humor Comic Book Podcast, which episode 98/99 just went up with that. There'll be more to come. It's back off of a hiatus. Lots of cool things happening at the Potty Humor Network. Had our guest last week, the phenomenal AJ Styles, IWGP World Heavyweight Champion, star of Ring of Honor, former NWA World Champion, former TNA World Champion, as it stands right now on a pace to be the most listened to episode of the Midnight Black Mass of all time. If it continues on its current pace, it'll beat the previous record holder, and that's a heavyweight, I'm telling you. The former vocalist of Pantera himself, Philip H. Anselmo, is the current record holder for the most listened to edition of the Midnight Black Mass. The phenomenal AJ Styles on a pace to beat that. Speaking of AJ, he's going to be in action this Saturday night for Ring of Honor Wrestling in Wheeling, West Virginia, and he's going to be facing our guest tonight on the program, the one and only high-flying sensation, Matt Sydal. You may have known him from his WWE tenure as Evan Bourne, but now he's back to the name that he started with on the independents, that he rose to prominence with, and that he is taken to the next level, and we're very excited to talk to him about a whole lot. We're going to talk about his WWE run. We're going to talk about Ring of Honor. We're going to talk about the state of the independents today and his rise and climb and the hard work and perseverance that he put in on the independent circuit to get to where he is today. And it's going to be an awesome interview, so stay tuned for that. What has the Reverend been doing? What has the Good Rev been up to? Well, this past weekend on September the 20th, should I say, getting ahead of myself. On September the 20th, I was in Rossville, Georgia for Empire Wrestling, providing the play-by-play for their video-on-demand content over at EmpireWrestling.net. You can go over there and check out all of the great VOD content. The full supercard from the summer, Crazy from the Heat, is up there, and a whole lot more with my return to the play-by-play booth, which has been a long time coming. Had a great run as a manager, and I'm certainly not done with it, but I'm just at this point in my career and my life where I feel like if I'm not utilizing all of my skills in some capacity, like I just want to do wrestling, and I love either as a manager or as an announcer. It's not so much as a promoter. That's not so much fun. But as a booker, even if the right opportunity presented itself, I like to make use of my various talents, and because of circumstances that have happened with the crew and the rejects and guys going on their own ways, it's really just made the most sense for me to transition back into this announcing role, because In the managerial role, let me explain this to you. You gotta mold guys and craft them, and you can't just, at least me, I mean, if you're one of these guys that they can just stick you with somebody and you can go out there when the light goes on and it's magic, then awesome. Every now and then that works, but for me, I like to work with these guys over time and literally make them part of the Devil's Rejects and get inside their head and find out what makes them tick and develop a rapport and a chemistry with them so that when we are out there, that there's nothing that's fabricated about it. You're getting, and it's helpful in a lot of ways being on that same page. So that's what I prefer. That's why instead of trying to seek out new talents and build a whole new entourage, I thought, well, I listen, and there's certainly some great talent out there, but there is a great void in the announcing area in all of wrestling, whether it be the ring announcers, the backstage interviewers, the play-by-play guys. I'm a guy that has a lot of experience doing that, and I like to do it, and I know I'm good at it, so hellfire, yeah, let me back into it. And that's what I've been doing with Empire Wrestling. So you can see them coming up October the 4th. They'll be returning to the Empire Arena in Rossville, Georgia at 22 Austin Avenue for the Chasing the Grail tournament as it continues into round 2. Last week, round 1 occurred. The winner will become the undisputed number 1 contender to the Empire Heavyweight Champion, The Temptation, Shawn Tempers. In round 2, we're going to see the 7-figure deal, Ace Rockwell, taking on Chris Crunk. Cyrus the Destroyer, the monster himself, is going to be taking on Rush. And we'll see a battle of the Lynch brothers once more, but this time in a totally different facet. As a totally different brother, actually a brother set that is on good terms. Vane Lynch will take on Joey Lynch. And Bobby Hayes, due to a double countout between Matt Fortune and Sean Banks, will get a bye through the second round, so he will not compete. So that's what's going on. That's who's left in the tournament. One of those men will be crowned the undisputed number 1 contender to the Empire Heavyweight Championship. And if you've been following Empire, you know what a battle has gone on to try to claim that spot. And Empire Commissioner Matchmaker, he just laid it out there. Andrew Alexander, he said, fine. No need to have 5 or 6 guys chasing this thing. A lot of confusion. Everybody had good points on why they should be the number 1 contender. Instead, we're going to take the top so many contenders, we're going to put them in a tournament and let them battle it out as a classic championship should be decided in. Not the championship itself, of course, but naming the next challenger for the Temptation, Shawn Tempers. Also, Empire Wrestling will be at Sir Gooney's Family Fun Center in Chattanooga, Tennessee on October the 10th with an 8 p.m. bell time, along with Cat Country 95.3 FM as a co-promotional venture there. The main event will feature the Cabal taking on Team Cat Country. That'll be Josh and Chase in the afternoon, and Empire wrestler Sean Banks, who is training them for their match. The Cabal team will consist of Empire Junior Heavyweight Champion Johnny Viper, the freaking star Matt Fortune, and the manager of the Cabal, self-proclaimed seductive Steve Dave. That'll be on October the 10th at Sir Goody's Family Fun Center in Chattanooga, Tennessee. And then October 18th, they're right back at the Empire Arena for more action. Also announced, but no official date given yet, Empire is starting a women's division that will be occurring once a month, and that will be a completely female roster. It's going to be very interesting. Also going to be a part of that, providing some of the announcing duties there. And then you can see me on October the 26th for the AIWF National Wrestling Showcase in Red Bank, Tennessee. That's a 3 p.m. bell time. There'll be talent from all over the country appearing there. You can search AIWF, that's Allied Independent Wrestling Federations, on Google or on Facebook and find out plenty of more info about that event. And then also just confirmed with Empire Wrestling as well as part of their promotional booth there, I'll be appearing, signing autographs, taking pictures at the Superstars of Wrestling Fan Fest on November the 15th. That's a Saturday night. Huge weekend. The night before that, Mick Foley's going to be there doing a comedy event. They're going to have Lucha Libre Thursday night. Saturday night is the Legends Fan Fest, and of course all day Saturday. Before that, there'll be a live wrestling card that night as well. Already confirmed for the event, Jake the Snake Roberts, Jim Cornette, Hillbilly Jim, Jim the Anvil Neidhart, Hacksaw Jim Duggan, Demolition Axe, Larry Zabisco, and more. and you definitely want to be a part of that. November the 15th in Rome, Georgia for the Superstars of Wrestling Fan Fest. Just search Superstars of Wrestling and find out more information about them. And so moving right along on the show, plugs are out of the way. I'm good with that. I sometimes feel like this thing turns into one run-on commercial. That's definitely not what my intention is. My intention is to talk professional wrestling and a few weird and wild and crazy things as well. So just wanted to kind of talk about some of the things I've been watching. I told you guys I was going to check out some indie wrestling, and I've watched some of the other indie wrestling shows, and I got to say, there's a lot of good talent out there. One thing that caught my eye, actually after recommendations from both AJ Styles and Matt Sydal, was Pro Wrestling Guerrilla. It's interesting because I'm more of an old school wrestling enthusiast. This is a very different style. It's very much wrestling for hardcore wrestling fans or wrestlers themselves. But you can't slight these guys. They draw great numbers. They're very popular in their local area and across the country with their DVD sales. I watched the extremely long, and it was like 7 minutes, a highlight reel of Battle of Los Angeles 2014, and watched select matches just that were on YouTube and things. And I gotta say, there was some impressive shit that I had never seen before in my life on that Battle of Los Angeles 2014. You know, when you look back to the early 2000s and you had guys like Low Ki and AJ Styles and Christopher Daniels and Samoa Joe, and they were kind of reinventing this indie style that was very oriented in high spots, but man, all those guys can go. Like, they all could go, and they all learned to get better over time. But they fostered in this style, and so it's almost like this PWG is like high concept wrestling evolution of that style. So it's not forever. I'm sure like Jim Cornette would have a heart attack if we saw it. It's something totally different, but I thought it was fucking awesome. So definitely check those guys out. I'd give them a plug anytime just for doing something different and original, man. I mean, like I said so many times on this show, you got to think outside the box. It's one of the only things that you can do to separate yourself from the pack in professional wrestling is be different, no matter how you have to do that. If it is to going back to being strictly old school with all of those tenets and mindsets, that would be different than what we see today. If it is doing what PWG does and doing its own thing, if it's even doing like Chikara does and doing its own thing, can't stress it enough. I have no beef with anybody trying to think outside the box and doing something different than the same old shit that you've seen year after year, day after day in professional wrestling. So, that's all I got to say about that. Moving along to the spooky news, courtesy of the Gasp Menagerie at dreadcentral.com. I like to bring you these stories, especially as we draw near to the Halloween season, my absolute favorite time of the year, if you couldn't tell by looking at me. So, video has surfaced from 1971, Chicago, Illinois, of the first live televised exorcism in the world. This is available on YouTube, but the link is there at dreadcentral.com at their Gasp Menagerie. Certainly, the two exorcisors, rather, they seem to be a bit like charlatans to me, based on watching the video. They seem to be a little shady. So, was it an act? Was a real live demon exorcised on television in Chicago, Illinois in 1971? Hey, the video is there for you to watch. Make your own decision. dreadcentral.com, the Gasp Menagerie. Exorcism is a popular thing these days. It's really made a comeback in horror movies and, in horror movies and even in comics, actually. As I say, Robert Kirkman, the writer of The Walking Dead, has a brand new comic called Outcast about exorcism. And like 3 issues in, early to tell, but so far is pretty fucking incredible. I would highly recommend that. And The Last Exorcism I thought was a great film, actually. It was a very unique take on an old genre classic. They weren't trying to remake The Exorcist. They were doing something entirely different and end up being magnificent. I have not seen the sequel, The Last Exorcism 2. I have not heard as kind things about it, but I will make my own judgment as I often do, especially when it comes to film, because sometimes I feel like there's just movies that only I like. Like, for example, a film I just went to see last night, Tusk, by the Clerks, Helmer himself, Silent Bob, Lunchbox, Kevin Smith. Quite possibly one of the strangest and most disturbing movies I've ever seen. Ever. I loved it. For all of the overused tripe in horror cinema that we see today, where either everything's a remake or it's the fucking 8th sequel of Paranormal Activity or Saw or whatever is the hot shit that year, that's total fad, that's nobody's gonna give a crap about in a few years, to just the schlocky, terrible, big budget horror movies that are, might as well be PG-13, and many of them are PG-13, and to me, I mean, a good story certainly is not limited on content, but the storytelling, but still in the horror medium, I feel like that R rating just allows you to reach as far as you need to reach to make it, what is the key word, people? Horrifying. So I would highly recommend Tusk on that premise, as Kevin Smith did something absolutely fucking fearless here. He put out a movie that was completely different than anything going on in horror right now, or maybe in many years. Genuinely disturbing and fucked up movie. One of the most fucked up things I've ever seen. You'll laugh. There's parts of the movie that are hysterical. There's parts that are horrifying. There's parts that will make you wince. So I highly recommend it. If you're not a fan of Kevin Smith, it's not really like anything he's ever done. So I wouldn't base it on that. I'm a huge fan of his dick and fart pot humor, but that's just me. If you don't like that, then I don't think that would have any bearing on whether or not you like this movie, because it's just a completely different animal. No pun intended. Okay, well, maybe it was. Maybe it was. So, last thing I'm going to talk about here before we go to break and bring our awesome guest, Matt Sydal, on the show is, you guessed it, it's the Revs Rant, fool! You knew it was coming. No half-stepping here. And getting a lot of fans on the Revs Rant, and I thank you. I appreciate the kind words you people send my way in regards to this segment of the program. I'm not trying to be on some kind of high horse. It's more like a cautionary tale, in my opinion, on things I see and especially have been involved in, mainly from mistakes I've made and learned from. So I'm just trying to save you the trouble. You don't have to like it if you don't. But it's mainly geared, this is mainly the real shop talk. We're really mainly geared toward industry professionals. And we got a lot of those that listen to the program, and I appreciate it. I appreciate that my opinion has some sort of weight or bearing on how you might guide or define your career. So here's what I'm going to say. Doing a lot of commentary recently, I've really noticed one thing that drives me up the fucking wall on independent wrestling shows. You guys are not watching the other guys' matches. You guys are not talking to the other guys in the locker room. You guys are not paying attention to what your peers and associates and compatriots are doing in the ring. You know how I know that? Because I could call 12 matches and I'll see the same shit in 10 out of the 12. The fans did not pay their hard-earned dollars. And hey, I know the economy's getting a little better, but these times have been rough. And every dollar counts. And you don't want to plop down your money and see, what did I talk about a few weeks ago? A bunch of guys going through a routine. And when you all do the same stuff, that's exactly what it looks like. Because, I mean, or clearly there's like some mass Vulcan mind melds going on, or there's like some Charles Xavier shit where you're like projecting all of your thoughts out and you're all going for the same stuff at the same time. No, that's not happening. It's just a very unfortunate coincidence, and it's a very preventable coincidence if you just pay a little bit of attention to what the other guys are doing, especially the big stuff, the big booms. Man, I would be asking what everybody else is doing on the big booms, because if you repeat those, then you're really limp dicking it, is what I would say. You're really, you're letting someone else steal your thunder, unless they did it better than you. But even so, it's bad news, man. Bad news. And it's boring as shit for me as an announcer to have to sit up here and call the same thing 20 times. That's beside the point. Hey, it's my job. I get it over. I ain't bitching about that. Well, I am, but I ain't bitching about having to do my job. But you're hurting your own shit. You're boring the fans that paid the money to see you. You're exposing the business, that's ironic, I know, on a podcast that's talking openly about the inner workings of the wrestling business. But if you're a big enough of a fan to listen to this podcast, then you already know. So do I really need to make that fucking argument again? That's all I gotta say. I don't think, some of our rural fans who come to the live events are necessarily gonna find this thing. And if they do, then maybe they feel like they're in on something special. So, that's all for the Revs Rant this week. Just don't do the same shit over and over and over again. Watch what everybody else is doing and make your shit different, please. Please. Alright, we'll be back with Evan Bourne, Matt Sydal, right after the break. Don't go anywhere. You're listening to the Midnight Black Mass on the Potty Humor Network and BeyondRingside.com. Don't go anywhere. The Midnight Black Mass is pleased to announce we have become an affiliate of the World Wrestling Network at wwnlive.com, the home of the finest pay-per-view and video on demand in all of professional wrestling, featuring promotions like Dragon Gate USA, Evolve, Combat Zone Wrestling, OVW, Shimmer, Shine, $5 Wrestling, and the vaunted Kayfabe commentaries with their U-Shoot, their guest booker, and their timeline series. You have to check it out. Of course, you can always go to their main page at wwnlive.com, but if you will, do us a solid. Go to facebook.com/pottyhumor or follow me on Twitter @DragonsRejects. We'll be posting our own unique links to these events as affiliates. If you go through our link, they give us a little kickback, and we greatly appreciate it. The Midnight Black Mass and the Potty Humor Network special event coming up on October the 10th at 9 p.m. from Ybor City, Florida. The lovely and vicious ladies of Shine 22 will be locking horns. You can view that live on video on demand on wwnlive.com for $9.99 for streaming and $14.99 for streaming live and later video on demand viewing. That's Shine in the iPay-per-view October the 10th at 9 p.m. Eastern Time. See all of the toughest and most beautiful women in all of professional wrestling do battle.
Whether you're having an autograph session, personal appearance, or live event, we got just the person you need to contact for all of those needs. SBI Bookings is home of some of the best stars in the wrestling industry today. They provide you with the best talent this business has to offer, from Kevin Nash, Larry Zbyszko, Scott Steiner, and many, many more. So who will you contact next time you're planning an event? The men of SBI Bookings. Check them out at sbibookings.com.
Wrestling fans, Anarchy Wrestling television tapings are the second and fourth Saturdays of every month at 4236 Level Grove Road in Cornelia, Georgia. For more information on Anarchy Wrestling and on the shows, to watch the television product, and a whole lot more, go to anarchy-wrestling.net. That's Anarchy Wrestling, the second and fourth Saturdays of every month in Cornelia, Georgia.
Hey kids, you know you want to be the coolest cat on the block. with your official Midnight Black Mass merchandise. Available at midnightblackmass.spreadshirt.com. Just in time for Halloween, we have brand new Midnight Black Mass t-shirts. We have reject t-shirts. We have beanies. We have hoodies and more over at midnightblackmass.spreadshirt.com. Get your merchandise today and be one of the cool kids. Where can you find 24/7 pro wrestling, MMA, talk radio, and more? BeyondRingside.com, featuring 24/7 streaming audio, including the Midnight Black Mass, Sundays at 11 p.m. Eastern Time, except for pay-per-view weekends when they run a mini marathon and the Midnight Black Mass goes on as its namesake at midnight. But don't forget the other great shows like Beyond Ringside, Wrestle Rage, To Be Determined, and more. That's BeyondRingside.com. Hey kids, get your official Midnight Black Mass merchandise just in time for Halloween at midnightblackmass.spreadshirt.com. Be the coolest ghoul on the block with your brand new Reject or Midnight Black Mass t-shirt. Get them exclusively online. Online exclusive, people. midnightblackmass.spreadshirt.com.
And we're back here on the Midnight Black Mass. My guest at this time joining the program for the first time ever, and a guy I haven't spoken to in probably 9 years and 5 months. Ladies and gentlemen, one of the hottest independent wrestlers in the country, Mr. Matt Sydal. Welcome to the show, my friend.
What an absolute treat, and what a wonderful introduction. Thank you.
Thank you. Man, so it's been a long time, but life has certainly taken you on an incredible journey since the last time I spoke with you. But hell, let's just wind the clock all the way back with the interview starting off. Just what lit the fire inside you, man? What made you decide that being a professional wrestler was what you wanted to do with your life?
Wow, okay, so that's clearly a way back clock. It's going to be, we're going to take the DeLorean way back for that. Wrestling resonated with me as a kid when I was a young man, but it wasn't until I saw a local wrestling promotion put on a live event. Actually on my 16th birthday, I went with my friends to it, and we had such a good time. It was at that point that I realized I wanted to be inside a ring. It became a goal was to figure out how I can get into a wrestling ring.
Just the live experience and just soaking it in all up close and personal was what made the connection then.
Yeah, because the only other events I had been to before was the first ever Hell in a Cell, which was in St. Louis, and it was an amazing event. But we were up in the nosebleeds and it was really far away, and my brothers were more into the watching it, and I, on the other hand, when I watched it, all I could do was thinking about wanting to act it out and do the wrestling myself. So I was a doer, not a watcher,
As most guys that end up becoming professional wrestlers are. So you had a long journey on the independents. You worked for many promotions. You broke in with Gateway Championship Wrestling in that group in St. Louis. Am I correct?
Yeah, that's where I did my initial training at a local garage up in North St. Louis, not too far from Ferguson. Is where I did most of my training for the first 2 full years. I was on shows after 3 months of training, but I was still paying to train and working on shows for GCW for about 2 years.
Awesome, and that's where I'm guessing you met Delirious and Daisy Hayes and that crew.
Correct. That was like my senior year of high school going into my freshman year at Mizzou. And then kind of right then around my freshman year at Mizzou, sophomore year, Daisy, myself, and Delirious all set out to hit some more shows, so we started going to like TNA on Wednesdays, and through that we met a lot more people in the industry. From those Wednesdays in Nashville with TNA, we were able to open up lines of communication with independents from all over, because it was sort of like a hub of the area, of the region. So that opened up a ton of opportunities for us, and that's kind of where we started to pick up.
Yeah, absolutely. I remember those days when you guys were first making your name, and we actually got a listener question regarding that. Do you have any estimate during those years how many miles you traveled total or put on your vehicles?
You know, I have no clue, but in all fairness, for most of those drives, I would drive the 4 hours from my house to Delirious's house, and then he would continue on and drive wherever. So on those shots to NWA Wildside, for example, when we head down to Wildside, Hunter would do the drive, you know, about 12 to 14 hours there, wrestle, turn around, and drive all the way back overnight. And we did that once a month for, 6 months to a year. So that was, the number of miles is immeasurable, but it was never, ever a question of how far is it, can we do it? Like, that never even crossed our mind. It was just a total blind pursuit of better matches, more exposure, finding better guys to wrestle, learning and growing. And, yeah, we never once really considered the miles or the hours on the road. It was all part of the experience. Still is.
Just that insane level of dedication is really admirable, and you could tell even in those days nothing was going to stop you guys from getting to where you wanted to be, because you just did it. You got in the car and you did it. Would you have any advice to the young up-and-coming independent wrestlers who are sort of on the same journey now?
Well, I think Truth Martini said it really well a couple months ago backstage at Ring of Honor, and he said that this is a group of unbalanced individuals, and it takes a little bit of insanity to be able to make it in wrestling. You can't think logically a lot of the time and now analyze things. Like, if something's your hobby and it's your passion, you should pursue it like that, like you're pursuing any kind of artwork, a musical instrument, all these kind of things. And if you want to be the best at it, you have to learn from the best, and you have to be around the best. Otherwise, you're just going to be stagnant, and you don't want to end up in a stasis. So if you're anywhere for a long time and nothing's happening, it's a good idea to try and explore other ways of learning and growing in wrestling. And so I'm lucky right now. Just jumped into another phase where I can grow and learn and get a lot of new experience.
Absolutely, and that was something I wanted to talk about later, but we can go ahead and talk about it now. It's just that there's a very fertile ground in the independent wrestling scene right now. I was talking with AJ Styles about it just last week on the show, that it's almost like there's more talent than there are wrestling promotions, and a lot of guys are finding that after their WWE run ends, there's a whole other world out there that's more than they ever thought it was going to be.
Yeah, so I was able to go around to a lot of independents, and a lot of those ones are still here today, and that's a big testament to those local promotions. And calling them local is not a bad thing. I think local is really important. That's like the lifeblood of what keeps wrestling going when WWE doesn't come to town for years, or, when people can only access wrestling on television if they want to see it live. Independent wrestling gives that life, that spark to the industry. And these companies that have been around for many years, they've adapted to the times. And so I was really shocked because when I left, I started independent wrestling with, VHS tapes and the kind of lowest production quality you could ever imagine. Then you get to now when I show up to places, they've got video packages for you. They've got, video screens, really nice entranceways. The game on the production side is ramped up, as well as the talent side is ramped up, because of their access to information and access to trainers and just people's ability to work together really well to create a good atmosphere for wrestling. So yeah, there's a ton of guys out there, and there's a ton of good promotions. There's a lot of action on the local scenes.
Absolutely. Well, you mentioned NWA Wildside a moment ago, And we do a little segment on the show ever so briefly with some of our guests called the Wild Side Chronicles, where we just go back and revisit the promotion. It was a blip on your radar, but I know you made a lot of connections there and had a lot of good times, so I just wanted your reflections on the promotion as a whole, your time down there, and some of the guys that you worked with.
Oh my gosh! Well, that was a drive that we never once did for a profit. It was purely for the benefit of working in a totally new territory. It was a chance to work with so many new guys that I had been around but never been. I've been on shows with or nearby, but never gotten a chance to work with. And we got put in a lot of creative kind of matches that made you think a little bit differently. Like I was in some kind of 6-man, elimination match that lasted quite a long time, 45 minutes or something. I was in a ladder match down there that was really, unique. Just being put in kind of like programs and doing television, because I hadn't done television wrestling since I left Gateway Championship Wrestling. So that was a great refresher course in, kind of wrestling for the TV cameras and for a live audience at the same time. And there was just a world of talent there, just young, hungry guys, and then the giant, guys that had been in and out of developmental. It was a great place to grow.
Yeah, awesome. It was definitely this crazy place. It was a cross-section of the industry at the time. So you had guys like you who were driving in from all over the place. You had some local guys who had been around a while. It was a unique place, and it was always a pleasure calling you guys matches. I really always enjoyed it. It was you were always very unique. We'd had AJ before who did all the high-flying stuff, but you did your whole unique spin on it, and it was all your own. And you had that boy next door look about you, which was always just so funny. Getting to know you, you're not quite as squeaky clean as that, but it was a great time. But moving on to the big time, you finally achieved the goal that pretty much any wrestler in the industry would want to achieve, and if they say otherwise, they're probably lying. You finally made it to the WWE, and you got to experience stardom on a whole other level. What was that like, going from being just a dude who wrestled on independent shows to being a star, somebody who gets noticed in public?
Well, so I had already I had quit my job about 2 years before then, and when I was wrestling for Dragon Gate in Japan, I basically was a full-time wrestler. So that moment was like a big switch in my life where I just became focused entirely on wrestling. And then that's when I started to really excel. When I got to WWE, I was in the developmental system for just a brief, 8 months to a year. I went to OVW for a while and got a crash course in OVW's style and the kind of Kentucky wrestling. And then I went down to FCW in Florida and got the Florida regional kind of dialect and take on wrestling. And then from there I was able to get back and start on ECW. And the big change was that everything was better than I could have imagined it to be. Like the quality of the opponents that I was working was really high. Like I was wrestling Chavo Guerrero all the time. I was on TV all the time. Like it really exceeded my expectations. And, it was cool when I had to set my Facebook to private because I was getting hit up by so many fans that it was just kind of a mess. So it was a nice little pride on my shoulder. And, my family supported me the whole time that I've been wrestling. It never mattered whether I was on TV or not because I never wrestled to be on TV. I just enjoy the act of it, and to be good at it, you have to be good at wrestling on TV. So it's a great fringe benefit that goes along with it, and I think people kind of give you extra respect if you've been on national TV. But for me, that's not the end game. I really enjoy live wrestling in front of live crowds. I think that's what I do best. So that's why I love doing these independent shows, just like I love doing WWE live events, which were also just a world of fun for me.
Oh, yeah, I can imagine. And, it's a rigorous schedule, and it's legendary, the toll it takes on people. I asked this question of AJ as well because you guys have been wrestling about the same amount of time and do a similar style. How are you feeling? How's your body holding up at this point, now being a young veteran who has done a relatively high-risk style for a long time?
Yeah, I mean, I had my first wrestling match at 17, and I had a wrestling match every single weekend after that. I mean, 2 a week. I mean, I had high averages, high numbers. And the damage to my body, I obviously have like a concern about getting brain damage from all these bumps on our head. But aside from that, man, I feel great. I had a motorcycle accident 2 years ago that absolutely annihilated my foot. Non-wrestling related injury that has hampered me and been a huge burden and been the main reason why I wasn't able to go back to WWE because it took so long to recover, and I never was able to get off the ground again. However, the rest of me feels amazing. I love yoga. I do a ton of yoga. I lift weights. All I do is basically things focused to maintaining my body, because it's one thing to be like, oh, yeah, I'm all beat up and broken from wrestling. That might happen. That happens to a lot of guys. But if you're beat up and broken from wrestling and you've been taking care of your body the best that you can, then you've had a full career and it's time to be done. But unless you're giving yourself 100% on the off days, you're not going to get 100% on the on days, and you're not going to have as long of a career. So that's been my focus currently, is to maintain a super healthy lifestyle, which will give me extra longevity, and I can still be a madman in the ring.
Right on. Go ahead.
While that is true, I will say that I have made an attempt to decentralize my approach and to make sure that I have other weapons in my arsenal besides just high flying. But I fully believe I can hit a shooting star press. I can go airborne, in 10 years from now. I don't see why that's not going to be possible.
Oh, that's outstanding. That's great to hear. And technology, science, everything advances over time. Guys know more now than they did back in the 80s and the 90s and even the 70s, for that matter, about taking care of themselves. So there's really no excuse, as you said, to have a long career if you do it right. Just one thing that you mentioned about going through the developmental system, and that's something I kind of wanted to talk about because there were so many great teachers in that system. I'm curious, who was in charge of OVW when you were there? What sort of minds were you learning from?
The guy in charge of the television show was Danny Davis. And Danny Davis basically kind of ran the show backstage on the television side and was really integral in teaching me how to work on TV down there. The head trainer at the time was Al Snow.
Okay, great. Al's a very intelligent guy. Al has one of the best ways of breaking down wrestling psychology and just making it simple for anybody to understand, of anybody that I've ever worked with. He's amazing.
Yeah, the one thing that he did for me that was really important was pick my shit apart. On the independents, you'd have a match, it'd be good, the crowd was great, everybody would say good job. In OVW, I would have a good match, I'd do a good job, the crowd would be clapping, and then he would say, hey, think about this, and, probably 20 other things. Hey, it's a rainy day. So I would, I'd say he really made me think before I acted in a lot of things, and I literally came from wrestling in a crazy promotion called Dragon's Gate and crashed right into Kentucky wrestling from literally one pond to the other, and it was totally different fish. So it did take me a little bit to get used to. But, in fact, I excelled in OVW and ended up becoming OVW heavyweight champion, which was the first time in my entire career that I had been the main champion of a promotion. And that meant a lot to me, especially to be dominating, the developmental system. I think if I had really maximized my potential, if you notice what former developmental champions have gone on to do, I think that, I have that ability. At that time, and I still do probably to this day.
Oh, without question. And then you talked about working in the Florida system as well. Would it have been like Dusty Rhodes and Steve Kern in charge of that at the time?
Yeah, there was, and Dr. Tom was also very integral in the day-to-day operations of everything there. I wasn't in FCW, and I worked with Kidman a lot as well down there. So I didn't do too much. I just did like the first couple TV tapings, and by then I was on the road and off to the races with being on all the live events. I ended up on the live events really quickly after starting on TV, which was such a great, like, it was just what I needed to get the feel for how things worked up in WWE land, not in developmental. So it was a good little transfer and pretty smooth transfer from developmental into the road.
Awesome. You speak highly of a lot of the people that you were involved with up there. One being Rey Mysterio, who I constantly see you praising on Twitter. Just his thoughts on Rey as a man, as a performer, and what was it like getting to work with him?
Well, I mean, you pretty much answered the question before you asked it. It's clear. What I think is really important is like the caliber of humans that are at a part of WWE. Like these aren't average people you meet in the day-to-day life. So, like, being able to be around like what you can only call greatness was such a motivating factor for me, and like it let me feel like I got to be a part of it. And he was a guy that treated me like a peer, that encouraged me, was a big believer in me. Guys like him and Chavo really helped kind of show me this style that I've been obsessed with my whole life, and they got to show it to me firsthand. And additionally, a guy like Chris Jericho was another guy that I've been watching since day one in my career, and just were more than willing and happy to like hand down, lifelong career lessons that they've worked their ass off to figure out, just hand them to me in a day when we go out and wrestle.
That's pretty impressive. The 17-year-old Matt has to be freaking out, but then Matt at that time knows that he deserves to be there and is continuing to kick ass. So now we're getting ready to wrap up. We got about 5 minutes left in the first 30 minutes, and if you want to hang on after that, you can. But if you need to go, that's fine. Just wanted to talk about what you got going on right now. We know on September 27th in Wheeling, West Virginia, you're going to be facing AJ Styles for Ring of Honor Wrestling, and he had some comments about that match last week. He said he was looking forward to it. Your thoughts, if you will.
Yes, that is the big announcement, without a doubt. Everybody has known that AJ Styles perennially, since I started on the independent wrestling, has been thought of as a top guy. When you're on the top that long, you end up becoming one of the greatest of all time. You become a guy who's forged his own niche in an industry, a guy who created his own job. He's basically everything good about professional wrestling in a nutshell. From the caliber of human he is to the type of work he puts out, his body of work speaks for itself. My goal is to begin a new body of work, and it's starting with a bang. It's starting with a big bang. I mean, it's literally just something that can create its own universe. I think the buzz around this match will be great for Ring of Honor, and it'll be a great way to introduce me back to that crowd, because what they're going to see is everything I have on the line. It's going to be my entire heart, my soul. You'll see it out there. It'll be evident in my behavior in the ring that there's no reservations. There's nothing holding me back, and you're going to get 100% reborn Matt Sydal September 27th in Wheeling, West Virginia.
A dream match in the eyes of many fans, many critics alike. It's not certainly a match that hasn't happened before, but now on a whole new playing field. Both of you have had maturity. You've had all these different experiences and opponents, and now you meet in the prime of your careers, and it's going to be one hell of a fight.
Yeah, absolutely.
Outstanding. Well, what other promotions are you working for that you would like to plug, or upcoming appearances?
Well, I have some work that's on WWNlive.com. Some of my stuff with Evolve. That was like my first few independent shows against Johnny Gargano and Ricochet. Additionally, here's the deal. Follow me on Instagram, MattsYdal, Matt Sydal on Instagram. It's really easy, and that's a great way to keep up with me. I'll post dates on there. I'll post pictures of me on my acupuncture pad. I post pictures of me working out at the beach with, you know what I'm saying? Just, it's a good glimpse in, and it's a good way to connect with me. You can also follow me on Twitter at FindEvan, FindEvan. I'll eventually change that to Matt Sydal, but I haven't yet. So those are the two ways to connect with me and stay up to date on what's going on in my world as I plan on hopping around from city to city, making towns, as the young bucks say.
Awesome. Well, we appreciate you joining the show. I did want to ask you about one promotion that you've been working for, Pro Wrestling Guerrilla. That was something that AJ talked a lot about. They just had the Battle of Los Angeles. You were a part of that. How would you describe that promotion to a fan who's never heard of it?
Well, I would say it is the most esoteric of the esoteric wrestling. It is its own individual atmosphere, and I would say if you live anywhere in California and you haven't seen it live, you are missing out. It is one of the best live professional wrestling experiences that you can get. It is, it's truly an artist colony of wrestling, where guys are set free to interpret wrestling however they choose. And on the Sunday night, on the final night 3 of Pro Wrestling Guerrilla's Battle of Los Angeles tournament this year, I witnessed one of the most special matches that I've ever seen in my life. And it was a 10-man tag that was right before the main event for the finals of the tournament. And it just really was a special moment that being there live, like seeing it on DVD will be awesome, but being there live to just feel the energy in the ether floating through the air in this building was something that you can't really measure, and it can't translate to DVD. So I felt like PWG is a place where I am determined to continue to participate in until I can get really high in the rankings, and ideally I'd like to get eventually to a championship level there, because both their tag belts and the PWG title are highly sought after between the boys, and I think that'd be something that would be a good accomplishment for me, if not to at least become a contender up there. And then kind of the same thing goes with Ring of Honor. Wrestling AJ is very important to me, and considering his stature on the scene, a victory over AJ has to automatically put me really high up in the competition for the Ring of Honor World title or the Ring of Honor TV title. I think I'm easily a contender for these championships, and that's what I'm going to do now. I'm not just going to be another match on these shows. I'm going to be a focal point. I'm going to have the spotlight on me, and I intend to take full advantage of it.
Well, to that effect, actually, besides the Ring of Honor Championship and the PWG Championship, is there any mountain left for you to climb, or something, a place that you've not been that you want to go, a country you haven't wrestled in that you would like to? What are you trying to achieve that you maybe haven't done or maybe never thought you'd get to?
Yeah, well, first of all, like I said, those winning some championships around the world is extremely valuable to me. I want to win the Best of the Super Juniors tournament. That's a top priority. Man, I mean, for me, it's been a dream since day one, was becoming a Best of Super Juniors champion, and I think now more than ever I'm prepared for it. I don't know. Sometimes it takes me a couple of years before I can win a tournament, but I want to get in it to start, and I fully intend on winning that before my career is over, just as I intend on becoming a champion at Dragon's Gate again. Basically, I want to have a very, very full schedule with lots of wrestling and very important matches. Otherwise, I'm not going to be happy. Doing that, being challenged being challenged consistently is what I'm looking for.
Well, I don't think you'll have any problem finding and meeting those challenges. Thank you again for joining the show, man. If there's nothing else you have, I will let you get out of here, but I greatly appreciate you taking the time. Now that you're back out on the independents, hopefully we'll run into each other once again, and maybe I'll get to call one of those matches again.
Of course, brother. That'd be an honor, and anytime you need me on the show, just holler at me.
Hey, absolutely, man. Take care of yourself out there.
All right, have a good one.
All right, see ya.
Okay, bye.
Ladies and Gentleman, Matt Sydal, thank you for joining the show. What a great interview that was, and we are out of time for this week's edition of the Midnight Black Mass. As you mentioned, he did have his WWNlive.com items that are up there. There's iPay-per-views, there's VOD. He said he's been working with Evolve. He's also got a U-Shoot through Kayfabe Commentaries up there, and they are one of our sponsors. So if you go to our Facebook page at facebook.com/pottyhumor or follow me on Twitter at Dragons Rejects, and click the special WWN Live links that I post there, then you'll help out the Midnight Black Mass. That's all for this week. We'll be back next week with one half of Team IOU. This is the Reverend Dan Wilson. Keep one foot in the gutter, one fist in the gold. I'm out.
and your bag.
That's my Andrew.
I'll take it. Try and find it.
Roll me.
Okay.
I'll roll me. Have a good day, Sonny.
Do you still have it?
Thank you.